Welcome to Popcorned Planet. I am Andy Signore, and we have a Travis Scott legal update. He is denying all responsibility in the Astroworld tragedy, denying the victims any accountability here. And I'm so grateful because we have Christopher Melcher here, attorney at law, to help us break down what this means. Now, when I saw this, Christopher, it upset me because it really does seem like he's just sort of spitting in the face of the victims. He says he wants to help and do what he wants, but now he's clearly legally trying to say he bears zero responsibility. He's asking for the lawsuits to be dismissed. This just seems like such a bad look, but is this regular? Is this what happens in these sort of big cases? I wanted to get your insight, Christopher. What do you, first of all, welcome. Thanks for being back.
Well, thanks for having me, Andy. This is surprising, just from more on a human level and a PR level that he would do this. Not a surprise to me as a lawyer, because that's what we do in civil litigation is, somebody's prosecuting a case and the other side's defending it, and they all have their roles and their games to play. But coming off of this tragedy with 10 people losing their lives and other people injured, this is a huge PR blunder, and we can walk through the legal thing that he's arguing, but I think it's a huge PR blunder.
Now, for PR, I mean, that's a given here. As he's trying to dismiss his suit, he's denied any legal liability in the tragedy, which killed 10 people. He goes, defendants began to respond to hundreds of lawsuits filed in the aftermath of Astroworld. Travis Scott has requested to be dismissed from multiple lawsuits he's named in. This is the rapper's first response to the suits since they started piling up. Scott has denied all the allegations set against him in 11 different lawsuits, according to one of his representatives, and he'll likely be filing many more requests to be dismissed in the future. He's named in most of nearly 300 suits that have been filed across Harris County. Hundreds more were injured as the crowd rushed the stage of Travis Scott's show, which was his show. Astroworld was his show. Representatives reiterate that Scott is not legally liable for the tragedy. That's sort of the excuse here. So they go and they talk about we know about all this information, but also just to make sure I don't forget, meanwhile, Live Nation and its subsidiary Score More also denying all allegations against them, as did the Harris County Sports and Conventions Corporation, which owns the venue NRG Park. Those defendants, however, didn't ask for their dismissal. So it's just sickening. I want to call out Live Nation as well, because they're also trying to skirt the blame, saying, hey, we had nothing to do with this either. I mean, I guess this is what you do when you fight a big lawsuit. If anything, they expect usually to settle in cases like these. But again, PR blunder, absolutely. But what is the likelihood of any of this getting thrown out, and why even try to do it? Isn't it pretty glaringly obvious that Travis and Live Nation are going to have to represent this case and figure out who was responsible?
Yeah, that's what will happen. So where they are, like you say, this is his initial response. So when you're sued, you have the right to either just deny all the allegations and demand a jury trial, or you can say, look, even if everything they've said about me is true, it does not amount to a legal case. There's no liability, even if the facts were true. And that's the type of motion he filed right now, because at this early stage, the court's not going to get involved in the facts. And as a matter of fact, they will have to assume that everything said in the complaint by all these victims is true for purposes of ruling on his motion. And the legal question is he liable? And he's saying that, hey, I'm just the artist, I'm the performer, I had nothing to do with crowd management. And so I'm not responsible. Well, it may be true that he was not involved and knows nothing about crowd management. I take that as a given. But this was his show. He's the one who invited everybody there, and it was for profit. And he has to be responsible for making sure that this is a safe environment, along with the concert promoter and the concert owner and the security company. This is not a surprise that this happened. When you have lots and lots of people gathered in one place, we've seen over and over again at concerts and sports venues, people being crushed because proper precautions were not taken. There's actually like a science of crowd management. And so as the person who is there, it's his show, he's representing this thing, he needs to make sure that it's safe. He absolutely has liability. So the court's going to deny it. Or if some of these complaints were not written correctly, maybe they didn't explain why Travis Scott is responsible, the judge will just say, look, go and amend it, put in some more allegations, and then the court will let the case go forward. So this is a bad move on his part because it's going to be denied. The case is going to go forward. And all he's done now is make himself look worse, as if that were possible.
Right.
He's now made himself look worse.
Well, that's exactly what I wanted to get to, because I figured this was sort of a legal sort of thing you do, but at the same time, there's so much scrutiny on him. Like I'm not surprised at all to see Live Nation denying allegations that they're a big, greedy, ugly corporation that, of course, is going to go do that. But Travis Scott's under so much scrutiny right now. And as you said, if it's clear that he's going to have his motion denied anyway, why put this out there into the world? It's yet another example of, I feel like, just him being clueless to taking any accountability, or, if he had handled this correctly, I feel like if he had showed remorse and empathy, Christopher, right, it would have helped a great deal. And all of us sort of saying, all right, you know what, maybe it's not Travis Scott. Maybe he was oblivious to a lot of this, but this yet again feels like another action he's doing that just makes me frustrated with him and sort of points the finger at him even further. What are your thoughts?
That's absolutely right. I mean, the lawyers will tell you, if you're ever facing a lawsuit like this, the lawyers will tell you, oh, you can file this motion or that motion, but he has responsibility to use common sense, and I'm sure he has a big PR team around him. This is too fresh, too new, and like you say, he had an opportunity right afterwards to show remorse, and he could have said, look, I am totally devastated by what happened. I'm going to do everything to make it right. And, I assumed that the concert promoter, the security company, the owners of this venue had their stuff together as respects to crowd management. Because, like I say, it's a science. There's manuals on it. There's studies. It's a real thing. They have a lot of professionals that know how to do that stuff. An artist, a performer wouldn't know anything about that. And if he would have came out and said, hey, I'm just as angry and disappointed as everyone else is that this was not managed properly, this was foreseeable, kind of lay himself out there, then the spotlight would have moved from him over to the people who failed to manage this crowd. But he is now owning the spotlight, and he looks like he doesn't care, and that is a really bad look for him. These cases gets, less attention over time. I hate to say that, but we've seen tragedy after tragedy. We go from one story to the next. Unfortunately, there's always something horrible happening in the news. And right now, this is fresh, and he should not be coming out there and saying, I have nothing to do with this. He has everything to do with this.
Well, and it's just funny because you say that, because it's like, I wanted to just add in, because it's like, if he had taken responsibility and said, look, this was the crowd management's fault, or whoever's fault it was, that would have required someone who actually knew what was going on, who had no fault of his own, right? That's what happens when Alec Baldwin is trying to sort of do that right now as sort of an example. I think Alec Baldwin's stumbling in his own way, as we've broken down. We just posted a video about that as well. You can go check out why I think Alec Baldwin has almost just done the opposite. But however, he at least was trying to say what happened. I feel like Travis hasn't done that at all. In fact, Travis is out there trying to say, let's not finger point, as we've seen here from his other attorney moment a few weeks ago, where he's like, stop the finger pointing, but then immediately proceeded to start finger pointing at the Houston police, which he did. It's crazy because to me, I think you're right on. And anybody who was involved in this scenario should have taken them a day to assess what went wrong. Like, it should have taken a day to assess that was a crowd management problem. They were all in this sector. They were coming from this area. Like, anybody with a brain who was able to sort of digest and see what happened should have been able to figure out pretty quickly where they assumed this really came from. And so for them to not be able to not have the wherewithal to know that, and then not exactly say this was a crowd management problem, to me screams someone who clearly knows, well, shit, that's going to get us in trouble too, because we required that fence to be there, or we required this, you know what I mean? Like, it just screams of what I think we always were saying. There were multiple people responsible here because no one was really paying attention to any of it, is really where I get the gauge. In which case, can multiple people be held accountable for this, Christopher?
Well, yeah, that's it. And we have a duty of reasonable care to each other as, fellow humans. We have to use reasonable care in everything that we do. And, whether it's driving a car or putting on a concert. And here there was no care taken. They know there's a history of people being crushed at events like this. They knew how many people were going to be there. They knew the layout of the stage because they laid it out. And so they had every opportunity to plan this in a safer way. But obviously they failed to do that because so many people got hurt. And then how he's acted afterwards is evidence of how he thought beforehand. So this is really bad for him. As like whoever's advising him legally is a freaking moron, because we're trying to figure out what was his state of mind when he was planning putting on this concert. And the lawyers want him to think, or a jury to think, hey, this guy's super cautious, doesn't want anybody hurt. Sure, he knows there's going to be maybe some rowdy crowd, but he didn't think anybody would be hurt. That'd be the last thing he'd want. Well, how he reacted afterwards is evidence of how he thought beforehand about safety and how he cared about his fans. And he's basically saying, I owe you nothing. I don't care about this. You're on your own. I'm not responsible. And so I'm happy actually that he did this, because I hope he loses everything he has.
I mean, wow. You don't usually go that harsh on something, but for once we're in agreement, because it was also just so gross to me when he was out there talking to young Ezra, the young child we lost in this, and he was apparently trying to, like, behind the scenes speak to the father and get a meeting with him, which I don't know what planet he thought that was going to, like, make some sort of amends or peace. I can't imagine that father wants anything to do with Travis Scott right now. Yet he sort of wanted to meet with him and pay the funeral costs, is what he's been doing. And then thankfully all the victims have pretty much said, F off. We don't want anything from you except for justice and certain, the courts to proceed and see what we really can get. And I say more power to him. I hope all of these companies, Live Nation takes a hit. They deserve it. Let's be honest. I think they deserve it even more so in a way, because they know better. They don't give a shit. They're not paying attention. They're a corporate entity that owns all of these other entities that are all involved. Like, the corruption in Live Nation is so intense and scary when you really break it down. So amen to this. And just, again, yet another example that I don't want to just stop the pressure on, because you're right. These stories will tend to die down and then they hope they can move on to the next one. However, there's a lot of lawsuits pending. So I imagine this is not going to die down for him. He's going to have to pay something. This is not going to be denied. And this was just yet another bad look on Travis Scott's team to try and skirt the blame here when we're not going to let him do it. Any final other thoughts you want to add, Christopher?
Yeah, I'm more interested in the criminal case. I hope that there's charges out of this. That's the only way we bring change. They're acting like, oh, we're so surprised. I can't believe this happened. No, they're professionals that put this on. Somebody needs to go get charged and go to jail. And having an insurance payout is not going to make a bit of difference to anybody, and it'll just happen. There'll be more victims in another event. Somebody's got to get fired. Somebody's got to go to jail, maybe multiple people, until there's actually change happens. And that way, the next concert promoter, the next venue operator says, I don't want to be that guy that goes to jail, just like happened in the Travis Scott case. So I'm hoping Houston PD and the prosecutors out there are going to find somebody or multiple people who are responsible for this loss of life.
Well said. And if you want to hear more good takes, go follow Christopher Melcher over on YouTube. #TheLaw. That's user CCMESQ on YouTube. I'll put the link in the description as well. It's also on screen right below him there. Thanks for always being here, Christopher, and offering your insight. And thank you guys for watching. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. We got more commentary coming for you, and we'll be live. We're live every weekday, around 12:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time here on Popcorn Planet. Thanks for watching.